You're listening to Good People, Bad Intentions, the podcast that focuses on fighters and their stories. Join me, Matthew Pine, as we learn lessons not just from in the ring, but on the larger battle of life. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 1 of the Good People, Bad Intentions podcast. And today I'm joined by none other than Aubrey MacLeod. Aubrey, welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
I really appreciate you coming on and being the first guest. For anybody that doesn't know, me and you met almost 2 years ago. We met at the February 14th card, the Valentine's Day card in Cape Breton.
Remember dates way better than I do.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say I really do appreciate you were like kind of a last minute cut man for when I was cornering Adam, and I really didn't know what I was doing, and it was really nice to have you there. And just even though you're the cut man, you've been through the all the ropes or whatever, and you knew what was going on. And luckily we did win that match. And I just wanted to say before we get on there that, I really appreciate that you're there. And so this whole podcast is really about having conversations and trying to kind of break down barriers within boxing, try to have some interesting conversations about how boxing can help everybody. And one thing that I thought about is, when I look at having you as a friend on Facebook, I see a lot of interesting and insightful posts that you post about whenever there's an event in boxing or whatnot. There's always a reflection. And I just wanted to ask you before we begin, how did you get into boxing?
Well, it's kind of a different route, I guess. I didn't actually box myself. My middle son Sean showed a real interest in it back in 93, 94-ish. We were in Kingston, Ontario at the time, and he bugged him, wanted to try boxing, and we went in to check it out into the gym, and Kingston Youth Boxing Club was just an excellent spot. The two coaches there, Colin and Kenny McPhail, both Cape Bretoners, so that's a good start right off the bat. Sean did really well. He won 2 or 3 Ontario championships and 2 or 3 New Brunswick championships. So when we moved here, and things kind of carried on from there. I helped out as much as I could at the club in Ontario, and then when we moved to, it got posted, I was in the military, got posted to Gagetown. We went into the Fredericton Boxing Club, and the guy running that needed some help as well, so I started helping him. And then he got to the point after I was there about a year that he had some personal things going on that he had to attend to, so he asked me to take over the gym. And 2 years after that, I had 2 gyms running at the same time, and over 100 members between the 2 gyms, and I was run off my feet for the next 7 or 8, 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, like you said a lot of interesting things. The first thing I wanted to ask is, you're originally from Nova Scotia, correct? You're from Cape Breton?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then did you move to Ontario because of your military service?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for your service. It's really awesome that you were given this opportunity to go and to have 2 gyms under you. What I wanted to ask you is, to what extent do you think your military service might have impacted your boxing?
The biggest thing, I guess, there's a couple of things you get from the military. I was in the combat arms for quite a few years before I moved on to easier things, but you gain a real appreciation of what your body and your mind is capable of through some of the very difficult courses and training and exercises and things like that. So you have a confidence about yourself and what you can accomplish, and you have a pretty good idea what other athletes or kids can actually do. So you know when to try to coach them into stepping out of their comfort zone a little bit more. The other thing is just the leadership and teaching ability, because the military, especially when you're in the combat arms, they put a lot of effort into teaching you how to teach, and you spend a lot of time teaching courses. So I spent a few years doing almost exclusively instructing in the military. So that helped a lot. Plus the physical fitness side of the military as well. You gain that body knowledge that you need when you're involved in sports as well.
Because one interesting thing that I had read, obviously you might know Customato. He's a big influence on me in this brand. And apparently one of the things that he used for his understanding of the human mind was an army manual that he was provided during his service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know, because you did touch on a few things, but is there a teaching that the mental aspects of warfare are sometimes the most important parts? And is there ways that you can correlate between your military service and what you learned through that and what you've learned through boxing?
Absolutely. I guess the ability, or not the ability, but you learn a lot about where your mind has to, like, you go through so much in some of these military courses. There are days that you just want to do nothing but quit. There are times when you feel like your body cannot do anymore, that it's done. You don't sleep for days and days on end. You're going with packs on your back and nonstop. You're uncomfortable. You haven't showered. You haven't eaten. You're scraped and bruised and banged up, and you'll do this for a lot of times for weeks. So over that time period, as often as your mind goes into that "I can't do this anymore" situation, you and your peers that you're with, you take turns bringing each other through that period, because you know what it feels like. You know how it feels like that, to believe that my body can't do any more than this. I'm doing everything I can, and I'm struggling. You do that enough over different courses and different types of training that you really gain an appreciation for, because you're with so many different people who have different personalities and different types of personal barriers and things like that, that you learn so much about what cues a person is giving that gives you an idea of the best way to talk to them, to try to push them through that next spot, because the military is all about being outside of your comfort zone. And boxing is very, very much like that. You know yourself. I know you train and stuff as well. So you know yourself that nothing improves while you're staying within the range of your comfort zone. You get better and you get more fit by being in that dark place where a lot of people's minds just, they don't shut down, but they don't know where to go next mentally. So they back off and they get scared and they quit. So it's one of those sports that's so much like that intense type of training that the military does, that there's so many similarities. It makes it it's kind of like home when I'm at the gym, because it's very similar situations to what I've been through on different training exercises and things like that, where things got pretty tough.
So eventually, do you become more comfortable with being in that type of environment, like the gym, being uncomfortable than being in the norm? Does it kind of become the new norm when you're in the boxing world, in the military world?
What I tell my fighters all the time is that not only do you have to learn to get into that spot that's outside of your comfort zone, you have to learn to appreciate it and love it there. You have to crave that spot. You have to, because almost every fight, I mean, some fights end very quickly before you even get a good sweat on, but almost every fight, you're taken to that dark place, whether you want to go there or not. And you've got a decision to make. You either try to dominate the situation and have the confidence in yourself and understand what you're capable of, or you get scared and you back off a little. And I don't mean get scared and run into the ring. I just mean hesitate that little bit. You start thinking about things. You start thinking about how your legs feel. You start thinking about, my lungs feel like they're on fire. You start thinking about all those little things that are taking you away from the focus that you need. So I always try to encourage people to spend as much time in that dark place and that lonely spot in their mind that they can, because after a while it becomes that adrenaline that you live on from day to day. And you know, I'm not saying that everybody should go out and old guys like me get their heart rate up to 200 and expect not to have to call an ambulance in a few minutes, but for athletes in sports like boxing, you need to be used to that spot, and you need to enjoy that spot.
Yeah, that's actually a really important thing, and it's something that I was talking with my coach Bridget not too long ago, and she really likes the feeling of when you're coaching, not even just fighting, but when you're coaching a fighter and you can barely move, you can barely talk. It's that adrenaline is pumping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a feeling that, I guess, unless you're in active combat or whatever, I don't think there's really any other similarity. And you have to be able to operate in that.
Yeah, and you've got a really good coach there too. She's done some wonderful things at that gym. So
thank you. I'll pass the message along.
I think I've told her that before too. But great spot you got there.
Thank you. So the next kind of series of things that I'd like to talk about is more so in the piece that you're saying that you know, what really brought you into boxing was your middle son and how you're coaching with him. Now, there's been a lot of amazing boxers whose fathers have coached them. You know, the Mayweather Junior and Senior, and Roger Mayweather, I guess his uncle. And what I was wondering is how does coaching your own son differ from somebody else coaching them? Is it more of a personal thing for you, or when you're coaching your son, was it easy to separate from being the father and being the coach?
Well, I've coached my boys in Sean in boxing, but I've coached all of my boys in baseball, hockey, boxing, like all sports, and it is difficult sometimes to separate the dad from the coach. In boxing, a little bit less so, because the mental side of boxing is just so different from most other sports that you really have to kind of be in tune. And with coaching my son those years ago, it was more about understanding him as a person to get through to him as a boxer. I think I know there's a lot of talk and a lot of, you know, experts and people that know what they're talking about that really discourage father-son combinations or father-daughter combinations, and or mother, whoever happens to be, parent-child situations for coaching and boxing. I don't think there's I don't think it's black and white like that. I really don't. I think like you said, there's Mayweather, there was Shane Mosley. There's just tons of examples of very, very successful fighters. And then when that fighter falls on his face a little bit and loses a fight that maybe people think they shouldn't have, everyone says it's because their dad's coaching them. Well, their dad got them there. You know, and so
I'm thinking about Lopez, and I'm thinking about
perfect example. Perfect example. And like any other fighter trainer situation, sometimes there's times when you got to go work with other trainers. You got to get, you need to. It's not necessarily so much different eyes on you, but different forms of communication and different ways of telling you. Often it's the same thing as what your dad or your other coach was telling you, just worded slightly different. Every fighter I've ever had, I've always, they come to me sometimes and say, like, this other coach over here started telling me stuff, and I say, good, listen to them, listen to everybody, try what they're telling you to try, and if it works for you, great. It may be the same thing I was trying to tell you. Maybe I just didn't word it in a way you got it. So it's one of those situations. That Lopez fight is a perfect example. Yeah, I think his dad was delusional in thinking he was winning the fight, but that for different types of parents, I think that's a different issue. I was always more the opposite direction with both my son, and all my fighters. I've always tried to be more critical of them throughout the fight, so that I'm trying to prepare them for even if they're winning, but it's a fairly close fight. I try to motivate them to, it's almost like they have to come from behind and be the underdog and battle through, even though they're already winning. Sometimes, in a close fight, the judges are judges, right? They're humans. They see what they see, and they appreciate what part of the sport they appreciate. And every judge is different. So it's difficult when you're in a tough, close fight like that, and it's your kid. You're nervous for them physically. You're nervous for their health. You're nervous for the mental side of things. How is he or she going to react if they lose? If I blow, can I use bad language here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
okay.
You can.
So if I blow sunshine up a kid's ass the whole fight, and tell them you're doing great, and they lose the fight at the end, they're going to look at you and say, "You told me I was winning." Well, maybe I didn't tell you were winning. Maybe I told you were doing great. But every fight is a chance to improve yourself. You're trying to be your best self. It's not about what happens, whose hand gets raised at the end of the night. The most important part is, did you improve? Did you learn? Are you going to be better because of the fight? Are you better from your last fight? So it's very subjective, and it's I think there's just all different kinds of coaches and all different kinds of athletes, and sometimes the parent-child situation works great, and sometimes it doesn't.
All right. No, I totally appreciate you reflecting on that, because I know it's probably not the best or the easiest topic to talk about, because it is fairly close, everybody's family. And yeah, it's really probably interesting being a dad, being able to see your son or whoever, if it's somebody else in another case, seeing your kid go through those dark places, as you said, and seeing, and trying to guide them, and having that, maybe that connection that you wouldn't otherwise have unless they've gone to those places, right?
Yeah. And the other side of it too, if you look at the child side of it, they get very used to tuning out a lot of what their parents say. I mean, that's pretty annoying, especially when they get to be teenagers. So it can work negatively in that way if you don't have that good connection, and you're not hearing what each other are saying, or you're not seeing the signs that you should be seeing. I think it worked out pretty well for Sean and I, but that doesn't mean it works for everybody, and I think it's just like any other coach. So you might go and try one of the best coaches in the world, and they just not have the effect that you need. Sometimes it's you have to have that mental connection that your coach understands not just what you're doing right or wrong, but what you're feeling when you're trying to do it.
No, that's totally right, and I never even thought of it in that way. I want to move now on to another topic. So as we discussed earlier on, you are originally from Cape Breton, and not too long ago, we actually had somebody from Cape Breton fight for a world title. Ryan Rozicki fought for the Bridgerweight title. He came up short, but a lot of people have seen how much heart and how much he put into that fight. A lot of people thought, it was a really big and enjoyable fight. And after that, he has become, I think, ranked by the WBC as number 10 in the cruiserweight division. I just was curious what your thoughts were from being a Cape Bretoner yourself. And then also, I believe you've been on some cards where Rozicki's fought.
We actually promoted Ryan's first couple of fights.
Oh, wow.
Brandon Brewer, Jack Promotions, and me and a few other guys that made up that team. Yeah, we promoted his first few fights. And I've known Ryan, I wouldn't say known him really well since he was like 15 or 16, but I've known him since then, and I've gotten to know him a lot better over the years, and it was I was super proud of him. That not just for the amazing effort he put in that fight, but the development that he's shown over the last few years, how much better he keeps getting, how hard he works. Um, it's inspirational, and you just want to see guys. Ryan had some struggles as a teenager and even as a young adult, and you just want to see those guys do well. You really do, because you look at a guy and you say, that kid's got a really good heart. Everybody kind of steps on their dink every now and then, and I'm sure I'm no exception to that rule when I was younger either. So you just want to see those kids do well when they and some people write other people off when they see them as a teenager, and maybe they're not doing great in school, or they're getting in a lot of fights, or they're getting in trouble or whatever, and it's just so unfair to write them off. It's as a coach, and I was never Ryan's coach. I've worked with him some at the gym, and spent some time with him, and did quite a few rounds of mitts with him different times, but just getting to know the person beyond the headlines, and what other people see, in the boxing side of him, and the image that people see when he steps in the ring. I was super proud of him, because as a human, Ryan's heart's in the right place, and he really works for everything he gets, and he works damn hard for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed him on social media. I haven't talked to him besides introducing myself the time that we were all together at that card on Valentine's Day. But one really interesting thing that I've observed from Ryan is how honest he is a lot of times when he's talking about his fights. Nowadays it's really common for a fighter to trash talk or talk up a fight, but it's really interesting how honest Ryan has been in all of his fights, and the possibility that he may lose, and that he shares things that most fighters don't share. And I think it creates an authenticity, and it makes me as a fan want to watch his fights, just because I respect him enough that he's being so honest with us, and not just telling us a bunch of marketing type things.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot to do with he knows himself, and he knows the fight game, and he knows. I mean, Ryan was one of those kids in the amateurs that he hit too hard and he was too strong, that nobody's coach that were kids around his weight wanted to put them in with him. So we'd always have to fight bigger, heavier, older guys, and he lost quite a few fights that way. And it takes a special type of person, a special type of athlete, to really use that as the cornerstone for their learning. And I think those lessons, and I think Ryan as a person anyway would generally be just super honest about anything. So you see the posts he puts on, and talking to him personally and things like that. He understands that nobody's invincible. He knows what his strengths are. He knows what his things he needs to improve are. He works on both every day. And I think being able to be honest like that shows a true confidence and a self-awareness that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, and just to say, you brought up that he was on some of the LJAC promotion cards. So what I really wanted to talk about next is Brandon Brewer, the lumberjack. Maybe can you just talk about your first experience and time first meeting him, because Brandon Brewer is a really big name, especially in this area. He's been on a lot of different promotions. He's been on DAZN. Can you just talk about maybe the first encounter you guys had together?
So I first met Brandon. He came into the Fredericton Boxing Club, and I was at that time, I still had both the Fredericton and the Oromocto gyms, but I was posted to Moncton in the military. So I was only getting there. I'd get to Oromocto on Friday nights. On the way home, I'd go straight to the gym instead of home. And then on Sunday, the Fredericton Club, Sunday night, I would go there. When I was leaving to go back to Moncton, I would go to the gym for, two 2-hour classes, so the 4 hours there, and then I would drive to Moncton after that on Sunday nights. So plus I was still traveling a lot of weekends for fights and things like that. So I didn't know him as well as I knew a lot of my fighters back then, because he had just kind of started right around that same time. And a kind of a funny story, maybe I shouldn't tell it, but when Brandon first came in, he came in with like 3 or 4 friends, and I could smell weed on them. So I was of the mind then that when people come in, I always found it disrespectful, because there were young kids at the gym, and they never did it. None of them ever come in smelling like that again. I think they didn't realize there was going to be kids there at the time, but I could smell it, and I kind of talked to Brandon and a few others, and I said, don't ever come into my gym smelling like that again. So I'd seen so many people over the years come in as groups, especially boys come in as groups, and it'd be more about, they sit around over a few beers and convince themselves that they're 6 feet tall and bulletproof, and they're going to go prove it at the boxing gym. And a lot of them go away. Brandon's friends all went away. He didn't, and he stayed and he trained. And the more I watched him, the more talent and just athleticism was ridiculous. So as time went on, I wasn't there enough. James Dow was more of his original coach than I was. And James spent a lot of time working with him, and he would work with anybody he could. But I saw how hard he worked in the gym, and I saw how talented he was, and I was pretty impressed by it. And he was very respectful to the coaches, the sport, everybody else in the gym. He was well liked. So as time went on, I started to appreciate what he was bringing. But like I said, I was kind of not around very much. After a while in Moncton, I had to kind of make a decision and say, listen, I got to give these. My youngest boy was school age, so I couldn't take him to the gym anymore at night because it was too late getting home, and I was just missing too much of the family time. So I knew I was going to have to give up the gyms. So I tried not to get too involved in too many new fighters' careers at that point, because I just knew they were going to have to be handed off to somebody else, and I didn't want them feeling abandoned or whatever. So after Brandon had 6 or 7 fights, and he got upgraded and went to nationals, it was more for an experience thing. I mean, I think he only had 6 fights at the time that he went to Canadian championships. And as a senior, that's a difficult thing. So he went and did that, and he came back, and he came to me one day. I don't think it was at the gym. Maybe it was anyway. And he said, will you coach me? And I said, yeah, we can work there. I got, when I'm home, I can certainly spend time with you. And it wasn't very long after that I actually retired from the military and moved back to Oromocto. So I had the time at that point. So he started bugging right away. I think he had 7 or 8 fights. He started bugging that he wanted to turn pro. And I was like, no way, man. No. Like at least 20 more fights, He was doing the math on it, considering his age and things like that. And he decided that, I listened to you almost on everything, Aubrey, but he didn't say that. He just came to me and he said, remember you told me not to turn pro yet? And I said, yeah. He said, kind of just signed my first contract. So, and he said, I need, and I'll never forget, he asked me a bunch of times, but he just said to me, what do I need to do, having started so late in this game, to catch up to everybody else that's got all this experience and do something with this? And I said, in very short terms, you just got to outwork every friggin' one of them. You got to outwork everybody. And he worked his ass off. He was working construction at the time, and there was a lot of overtime and things like that. And he was getting frustrated because by the time he got home, some 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, it was just too late to get to the gym, and too tired from being out in the sun all day roasting. So he took a layoff from his job. He moved into like some of the places he lived just to be able to train full time, so he wouldn't have to work to support himself. He was in essentially a condemned house for a year. That
Wow.
friends of his construction company that they were going to be renovating and rebuilding the house, but they had other jobs and other commitments, so the house was just kind of sitting there. So they said, well, if you want to live there, you can. So he started living there, and it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't a whole half of the house was completely just bare studs and things like that, but there was 2 rooms that were sort of finished. So anyway, within a couple of weeks, he had to buy a pellet gun. He had to sit in the living room and try to shoot weasels as they went through the kitchen. So
Wow.
and mice and rats and yeah. So it's just showed so much sacrifice that, you know, he drove a piece of crap car that he'd end up bringing it to my place once a month or so for me to help fix something else on it. But the commitment was ridiculous. Then he moved into an apartment that had what used to be a martial arts gym in it, attached to it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that was perfect. He got a couple of heavy bags, and I had more time in the morning, so I would show up at his place at 6 a.m. We'd do mitts for an hour and a half, and then I'd go to work, and he'd go train somewhere else for the day. Like he started from that point. He was training 3 times a day, and much to my, I wouldn't say disappointment, but much against my advice, did not take a day off, not even a Christmas day off, for 6 straight years, 365 days a year. And there was not one of those days that he didn't train at least once. And even the days that he fought, if he fought on a Saturday night, Sunday morning he was out running, Sunday night he was at the gym training. Like, he did not take a day off. And when people commit like that, like, you have to admire them, and you have to try to do what you can to help them. I mean, he wanted it bad, and, you know, he kind of burned out a little bit for a while. Like, I don't know how he went that long without burning out long before that, but it got tiring. It got difficult. So he had a couple of fights where he didn't perform particularly well. And when you do that, your confidence takes a bit of a hit. So he struggled with that for a little while. And this last year and a half it feels just like when he started. He is working his ass off all the time. He's confident. He feels good. He's back to himself and fighting like he's supposed to fight. What happens, because I live in Moncton, he lives in Fredericton, we don't get to spend a lot of time together. You know, we talk on the phone quite frequently, and we train together when we can. But Brandon wants to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn so much that he's the type of guy that'll kind of go down a rabbit hole for a little while.
Of course.
Like, okay, I want to learn this aspect of the game, and he'll focus so hard on that aspect of the game that you get a little rusty in the parts that you're already good at. And what I've always tried to tell fighters is, you don't win fights by doing what you're bad at. You win fights by bringing your best tools and making it that kind of fight. And yeah, you work on the things that are a little weaker in your game, but you do that 20-30% of the time. The rest of the time, you make what you do well better than everybody else's. And he's back to doing that again. He's back to just being slick and moving and not getting touched. You know, he spent a few fights where he'd sit on the inside and bang with guys because he just kind of thought that was fun, and he wanted to try it, and he wanted to kind of be that inside guy for a little while. And, you know, inside fighters are usually inside fighters because either they're short and they have short arms and that's where they have to be to land, or that's just the way they've been doing it their whole career. And it's what they're better at. So they keep working that. Anyway, he's I mean, we're looking forward to this fight in February against Jessie Wilcox. Jessie's a very good fighter. I think Brandon's probably going to stop him. I see so much of that old Brandon in him now that it's so refreshing. That, you know, he's as fast as he ever was. He's got more power than he's ever had. He's moving well. So I think you know, he's not young anymore, but I think he's got quite a few good fights left in him, and hopefully he'll be able to accomplish a few more things and be proud for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that fight. I had the opportunity of helping Adam cut weight with Jessie Wilcox. Was able to meet and talk with him. Really nice guy, as is Brandon Brewer, and we're really blessed as Canadians. Like a lot of the times, our fighters are just really nice people and likable people. I mean, if they weren't going on the fight night on Saturday, you really wouldn't know that they were fighters because
That's and I think that's more common than a lot of people. And I think I know where you're going with that, and that you see so much of this bravado and so much of this crap shit talk that guys are doing to sell fights. And but I think even those guys that seem really obnoxious on TV, most of them are real nice guys too. Like I know quite a few people who know Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury, you love him or you hate him. I think he's hilarious. I think
I
he's
do
funny.
too.
But the people I know that know him say that is one of the nicest people in the world you'd ever want to meet. And I believe him, because most of the people I've met in this sport are just great human beings. Somebody once told me, I can't remember who it was, that there's so many nice people in boxing because it's the most honest sport in the world. Because once you get in that ring, you can't bullshit about how good or bad you are. You're going to prove it or you're not. And you're going to have to hang your head when you lose, and you're going to have to control your ego when you win. And people learn so many lessons about themselves through the sport that I think it humbles people a lot.
And another interesting thing that I was going to say is, so I followed all the Three Lions Promotions cards for the most part. Very seldom do they have two of their own fighters going against each other, because a lot of promotions they'll build one fighter and then build another fighter, and they'll kind of have people come in and fight. This is really interesting that Three Lions is having, because I never had anticipated. Did you anticipate that this was eventually going to happen?
COVID kind of made that happen. The truth of it, because like all promoters, Three Lions were trying to figure out a way to be able to put on a card. And there was so many changes back and forth about being able to bring people to Canada that aren't Canadian, that most promoters in Canada had to look for matches within Canada. There just isn't that many. There's not that many pro fighters. So, the fact that Brandon and Jessie are close in experience and close in weight, it just kind of became a natural thing. And Dan from Three Lions didn't try to force it down anybody's throat. Didn't he just asked them, the two of them, would you take this fight? And both guys knowing that, there's just not a lot of opportunity right now with COVID, that they need to get in the ring and they need to fight. And Dan's bringing, the WBC on board. So whoever wins that belt gets ranked and should look at Ryan. He got a world title fight, having been ranked not a year and a half, I think, with the WBC, and only having a few fights after he got ranked, and next thing you know, he's fighting for a world title. So, that's what Three Lions is bringing to the table on this is that WBC belt that's been sanctioned, and whoever wins gets the ranking. Whoever loses, if they put on a hell of a performance, they haven't really stepped back that much. This has all the markings of a war. It really does. Both guys are courageous as hell. Neither one wants to lose ever. They're both tough as nails. They're both skilled. They both hit hard. So yeah, it's going to be a tremendous fight. If it ends early, it'll be disappointing for most fans, but it's going to be a good one, I think.
Awesome. So I just wanted to transition now to, you were saying now you are in Moncton. What kind of things have you been involved with recently? This is maybe an opportunity to shed on some stuff that have you been able to still get at the gym and to work with some fighters? And
yeah, I've been, well, except for the last few months. I got a couple torn tendons in my shoulder, so I pulled away from the gym because I'm not very smart when I get to the gym. It's a military thing. So if I'm giving a floor routine, a strengthening routine, I will not do a push-up. I will not give somebody a push-up unless I'm doing it with them. So my inability to not and I want to do mitts all the time. And even when my shoulder was hurt and I say, okay, I'm not going to do any mitts and I'm not going to do the floor routine, I get out and start demonstrating the punches and start demonstrating defense and things like that. And I rip my shoulder up again. And
Wow.
so I had to pull back a little bit the last little while, but it's starting to feel good. So I'm going to get back in there as soon as these new restrictions lift again. But
so when it's fight camp, it's fight camp for you too. You're getting the extra push-ups and everything.
When I was running the 2 gyms in Fredericton and Oromocto, I was giving all of the warm-ups. I was doing mitts for easily probably 2 hours a night. And then I was giving the strengthening routines for 2 classes a night, 6 nights a week. I was in pretty good shape. I was doing probably 600 push-ups a day and 1,500 sit-ups or so of different types. And so it was, I was in pretty good shape. And when I give it, even still now at 55, I'm not happy unless I can make at least half the class want to quit. And years ago, I wouldn't be satisfied until I made the most fit person in there want to quit. But I've had to humble myself a little bit, and some of the better conditioned fighters can hang with me now and beat me. But so I that pride thing kind of kicks in, and I'll do a plank until they have to turn the lights out and go home if somebody else is still hanging on and not quitting yet. So
have you had the opportunity to work with Sean Finnegan?
Yes, a bit. Sean's I haven't spent a lot of time in Oromocto coaching, except for when I'm there with Brandon, but I'm always talking with Sean. I give him as much advice as I can. Brandon works with Sean a lot too. Like they
have a funny back and forth. It seems.
Oh yeah, they're hilarious. Sean came in to the gym. I think he was 11. My youngest was 4 at the time, 4 or 5, and he used to get down on his knees and spar with my little guy all the time. And there was another kid, Muhammad Hariri, that joined around the same time as him. That was the same age as him. It was just a little firecracker, tremendous athlete too. So those 2 guys, man, I got to commend Sean a lot, because the most difficult thing for kids to do is to go from them adolescent years and make it all the way through the teenage years, staying focused on something. Because if you're going to lose if somebody joins a gym when they're 15, you can keep them usually. If they join the gym when they're 11 or 12, you're going to lose them for some period of time in there. They're just, it's that evolution where you think, okay, I'm not a kid anymore, so I got to ditch all this crap that I was doing as a kid. And they move on to, girls and cars and parties and whatever. I'm not saying, Sean didn't get interested in that stuff too, but he stayed with the sport. He never quit. He trained, and, he's in his 20s now, and the kid's winning. I think he won Male Athlete of the Year at the university he's in. He got a scholarship, the boxing scholarship at Crandall University. They got a great team too. And the things he's done, he's Canadian Forces Athlete of the Year last year.
Wow. I was speaking with him. I don't think I don't know if he has any intentions of going reg force, but I know he was in the reserves, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's still in the reserves. I'm not sure. I know he always did intend to go reg force at some point, but I don't know that he did track in high school, but he went to Crandall University and decided, okay, I'll give this track thing a try. And he won the first gold medal that Crandall's ever won in track.
I saw that. I think it's awesome. I think a lot of combat sports athletes in Canada, whether you're like a boxer or a wrestler, they're kind of upset because most of the times there's not a lot of opportunities varsity wise for like getting a scholarship. And when I saw that he got this scholarship for Crandall University and how they started a whole boxing team, I was like, wow, this is like something I don't think I've ever really seen. And it's awesome that they're doing that. Because it gives him an opportunity not only continue his boxing, but also to develop as a person, to go to school and find out that he's a really good track athlete as well. Like that's pays dividends in the ring too.
For sure. I'd love to see other universities, pick up on this and run with it, because what John Olhauser at the head coach there at Crandall's, he's just putting together an excellent program. He's got fighters from Bermuda and other countries, national champions from other countries, and he's got a few novice too, young guys that show a ton of potential but just don't have the experience yet. So he's building it the right way. He's got all weights and all levels in there, and kudos to the university for giving him that the ability to do that. It's just an amazing thing. I hope at least 4 or 5 more universities in Canada do it. I know there's still a few universities in the U.S. that do it, and then plus the military colleges in the U.S. do it as well. So.
He's got really fast hands too, and I'm just thinking to myself, maybe Ryan Garcia might be in the future for him, because they're both good-looking guys and fast hands.
Yeah.
Who knows? What weight class? Do you know what weight class he fights in, Sean? Sean? Because he's still pretty.
Well, the amateur weight classes are different than the pro, but he fights right around 141, I think.
Okay,
right?
Perfect.
But I mean, at that age, and he's over 6 feet tall, he's going to fill out and move up for sure.
Okay.
Ryan Garcia, that's kind of an interesting prospect. I mean, I think Sean's planning his long-term or mid-term goals right now are to try to make an Olympic team.
Wow. I think that's very possible.
Yeah. So I think that if that's the goal, that's what he's got to focus on and see where it takes him from there. I mean, there's a huge advantage for guys that come out of the pros as an Olympian. You have, promoters lining up to talk to you and make offers to you, where, guys that nobody's heard of starting as a pro, it's an uphill battle. So, I know he does want to turn pro eventually. He used to tease Brandon and I all the time when we were promoting shows. He used to say, "Oh, I want to, why don't you put me on there?" And we're like, "Sean, stick to your goals right now. Like, you're a good fighter, but and I think he was just doing it to get us going anyway. I think he always intended to follow the amateur route for at least a few more years."
Yeah, I had a really good opportunity of being able to connect with him when he went with a few fighters to Hawaii to fight. I was just messaging him or whatever, and I do intend on having him as a guest in the future, because he's a really bright prospect for this area and the Maritimes and whatnot.
He's a well-spoken kid too, so he would make a good interview. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that I think we're just about good for time. I really wanted to say thank you for coming on. I know it's only 11 days till Christmas, so I wanted to say
really?
happy
time to start
happy
shopping,
holidays. yeah, and a happy New Year, because it's coming soon, and I've had a little difficult time getting guests on here because of the time and everything like that. This weekend there, I don't know, because there's been a change of conditions in Nova Scotia this coming Friday, but there's the Thrilla and the Hilla at the Scotia
it's
Bank.
Still on at 50% capacity from what I just read it.
Oh,
I just come in from work like 10 minutes before we started the interview, but I had a chance to look and saw Joey Laviolette and a few others post it. Yeah, it's still a go.
Because I've had the opportunity to see 4. I've seen 4 of the pros work. Joey came into the gym, and everybody's looking amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results. We got Brett Beaton. He's doing his pro debut. Yeah. Kyle McNeil. He's moving on up to welterweight. So he fought Tyson.
He's a warrior.
Yeah. He fought Tyson Cave. I don't know at what weight, but he's definitely 135 maybe.
No, I don't think it was. I think Kyle had to cut quite a bit. I think it was like 128 or catch weight or something. I mean, Tyson had to come up too, but Tyson has so much experience, and he's just such a talented fighter, even at his age. That Kyle was in a little bit as far as experience goes over. Like Tyson had well over 100 amateur fights and such long pro experience that. But Kyle's a warrior, man. He doesn't quit, and he's one of the fittest guys you'll ever see in your life, and he's great to work with. I've worked with him, match made some of his fights, and we had him on at least the LJAC show we did in Sydney, I know we had him on that, and I did the matchmaking for another one in New Glasgow that he fought on. Just such a pleasure to work with and deal with. Just super easy. He'll fight anybody. He doesn't need to make a ton of money. He just loves to get in there. So it's
just got his promoter's license too. He told me.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on Facebook. Yeah.
2022, he might be putting on some real deal.
Kyle's a hustler, man. He'll do the work. He'll put in everything it takes to put on a successful show. So I'm looking forward to that.
Another guy that I'm really looking forward to, Aaron Crawley, light heavyweight. He's going to be fighting on that card, also from Tribal. So yeah, there's quite the showing for Tribal, and I'm really excited that there is a card that, because I think with everything that's been going on with COVID, the one thing that I think has been plaguing fighters is the uncertainty of whether event will actually go through or not. And I'm not sure how much that's happened in the New Brunswick area, but
there hasn't really been anybody planned any shows in New Brunswick and for quite a while. Like just a few years ago there was 4 promoters in New Brunswick, and we decided to pull back on it because the promoting and fighting thing for Brandon was just very mentally exhausting. And that kind of led to the burnout he ended up with a bit. So we decided it was best just to, even though we were very successful as far as we put big crowds every show we
even
did.
You were even having MMA fights, right? On the
Brandon, I didn't get too involved in the MMA fights. A couple of them I think I went and helped out a little bit on the day of the fight, but I didn't get too involved. It's just I don't know enough about it and don't know enough of people in it to be much use to them. So. But yeah, it was pretty good. But there was Mike Dwaron, Dwayne Story, Ian McKillop was coming in from Montreal and doing some shows, and Dominic Babineau did a show. So and now all of a sudden, really, there isn't anybody promoting in New Brunswick right now. So I'm hoping somebody,
if anybody's listening, they want to get into promoting.
It would be. It'd be nice to see it pick back up again, because it was, a few years ago, there was 5 or 6 shows a year in New Brunswick, and almost the same in Nova Scotia at the time. So the Maritimes were booming. So I'm hoping once this COVID stuff is done and people are confident that they can get through the whole promotion, because I know in Nova Scotia there was 3 or 4 shows that they thought they had that window. 3 Lions was doing one, and and I think there was 2 boxing
this one
shows
too. This one too got canceled, and then Fight League Atlantic had to eventually switch to New Brunswick to have their second MMA card.
Oh yeah.
Derek, I've talked with Derek quite a bit because he's been one of the guys helping me with starting this, and he's told me that, I'm not sure how things stand now, but it's been really hard to deal with Nova Scotia and how the commission was, basically got the green light, but then they had to, because of other circumstances, they've had to cancel cards. So I'm hoping that this is something that doesn't happen in the future, because, fighters, unfortunately, at the local cards, I don't think they get paid as much as maybe they should, especially if they get a huge, if they get an injury or anything that comes with fighting.
It's club shows pretty well anywhere are not for, people underestimate how much it costs to put on a show, and how much risk promoters are taking with their own money, that they probably sit back and say, oh wow, there's 3,000 people in here, them guys must be making $50,000 a piece, and it's like, not even close. Divide that by 10 for the 8 and 10 rounders. And the guys' debuts were making very little, $800 to $1,500 for most of them. So it's tough. It's not something you're going to make a living at, unless you are talented, dedicated, you put the work in, and you get a little bit lucky.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for listening to the first episode of Good People, Bad Intentions. I'm your host, Matthew Punt. Thank you. I'm your host, Matthew Pine, and joined with me was Aubrey MacLeod. Sometimes when I look at how your name is spelled, I say the Mac instead of MacLeod, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, it is Mac.
Oh, is it MacLeod?
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize for that. I have for some reason I can't pronounce it properly.
Unless you're a telemarketer, then I'm MacLeod.
MacLeod. Oh, I like that.
Or MacLeod.
Ah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.